Welcome back to the Brown Heart Wellness Podcast. I'm Samantha Edu, and today we're going to be talking about quarter one. We're going to be taking a journey back from January, February, and March. I'm doing something a little bit different today. Usually, I script out my episodes so that I can stay on track, keep my brain going the way that I want it to go, not say anything that's going to get me canceled. But one of the brave things that I am working on is being less scripted. Even if I'm the one who's writing the script, I want to be less scripted and try to give myself an opportunity to just get on the mic, say what I'm going to say, and see how it turns out. Let's roll the dice. All right, y'all. We are going to be doing our quarterly check-in episode today. We will be reintroducing the Root Framework as our check-in guide. And also, bravery is a lifestyle. And you're going to hear how I have been using bravery as my North Star in Q1 and what that has felt like, because it has been quite the journey. Let's get into it. Y'all know we're going to start every episode with an affirmation. So our affirmation today is, I honor my growth even when it was quiet. Say that again, girl. I honor my growth even when it was quiet. I am brave in reflection. I'm gentle in pause and rooted in the truth that every step has meaning. So I use that affirmation to guide my journaling, my reflections on Q1. So if you see me looking down, it's because I got my handy dandy notebook. I decided this time I needed to put some pen to the paper. Okay. I want to be able to share with you my true journal reflections from me exploring how Q1 went for me. All right, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the Root Framework. When I introduced the Root Framework for our One Brave Thing challenge, I must admit it was for the challenge, how we take the time to reflect on things, being open to new opportunities. What are some of the things that we needed to overcome? And then celebrating what did thriving look like for us in our everyday lives. And that is the Root Framework. But it was for being brave every day. But when I sat down to think about how do I really want to take the time to reflect on Q1, I implemented the Root Framework. I reflected on what Q1 looked like by asking myself some questions. I asked myself, in what areas was I open to new opportunities? And then what were some things that I needed to overcome? And then what did thriving look like? And what areas did I feel most aligned? Because that's what thriving looked like for me. And it was such a beautiful journaling opportunity. So we're going to get into that. So I started with the R in reflect. There were some things that came up that surprised me in Q1. First and foremost, I did a lot of self-reflections, but I did not write as much as I would have liked to do so. I also felt like I was in such a self-reflective state that it became a task. Like every single thing was something to reflect on. Maybe because I knew I was preparing to launch the One Brave Thing challenge, and I wanted to be able to share authentically with you all and have an authentic experience myself, even though I've done this before. I'm not sure, but self-reflection, like it just felt like it was a task all the time. Like I wanted a break from reflection. Another thing that surprised me in Q1 was how aware I was of the lessons that I was learning. When you are intentional about the brave steps that you are making and you are intentional about, you become aware of every lesson that you need to learn. Like I was immediately aware that I needed to expand my in-person social energy. Yeah, I needed to expand my in-person social energy because I was worn out. If I wasn't like around the people I'm around all the time, I was worn down really quickly. And I knew that that was not going to be, that did not align with my goals for Brown Heart. I also realized that physically, I'm not as in shape as I used to be. So I needed to start getting out of just doing yoga. I needed to also move my body and exerting more energy in that way. So I started to walk. So it's like everything was a lesson. I had to have some hard conversations. And it's like immediately I learned the lesson. Like, no, you need to learn discernment, babes. You need to learn discernment. Yeah, so that was another thing that surprised me was how quickly I learned the lesson, how quickly I stopped to ask myself, what is the lesson you need to learn here? I was even asking myself, because I learned this in therapy, what is it that your little girl is needing in the moment? And I found myself asking that immediately once I felt something not right in my spirit, or even the moments where I felt super excited because I did something that I said I was going to do. I checked in with myself and I took the lesson that I learned and applied it. And that was surprising and exciting because it makes me excited to do even more. Some patterns or beliefs that needed to be released. Ooh, this was such a good one. Boy. I don't know if I have always held this belief. I do. Ever since I was young, I've always held this belief that if I showed up authentically and created brave spaces and was open to community, that what I would receive in return would be the same. That is not true, Samantha. That is not true. And although I have learned that lesson many times, I definitely had to learn it again. And I think this time is the time it's going to stick. Where, of course, you want to believe that everyone sees you as a human being and sees you and wants the best for you and wants to build true community and connective tissue, like they want to build roots with you. But that is not always true. Some people do see you, but they see the value in you and they want the value that you bring rather than building roots with you. And I think that was a lesson that I had to take out of, Q1, and excited to take it too. Like, I'm excited for that lesson because I think that will propel me in ways that in the past, it has made me stay longer than I should have in situations where the connection wasn't really authentic. There was something that I also wanted to bring up, some thoughts that came up this quarter in my reflection. I really felt so much joy and gratitude out of being creative. So this quarter, I planned my daughter's 16th birthday, and instead of us just going to dinner, I planned what I would have done in the past, which was really creative. She had a sleepover. Her friends came over. We did gifts. It was so cute and so sweet. And it was just what she had imagined and more. And it didn't take, it wasn't like it took a lot financially, but it did take a lot of creativity, and that I loved. And then we had a Galentine's, which was our hearts and honey. And that gave me such a sense of creative agency and connection with my friends, and it was just beautiful. And then I got to connect with one of my other friends, who's also Candace, who has also started to have monthly gatherings with our group of friends, and so much meaning behind it. And that has made me feel like myself, like I'm in contact with myself again, and that I love. Other things that came up was there were times where I experienced overwhelm and fear in the moment, but it didn't last long because, like I said, as soon as a feeling came up that it just seemed foreign, I immediately asked myself, what am I feeling? What am I learning here? What is, my younger self needing? Like, what is happening in the moment? It's been such a growth quarter full of growth, right? And what is a little bit scary is that as much as I've written in these, 4 or 5 pages, contemplation, there's so much more that happened. And the idea that this is the pace that I would be going every quarter is wild, right? So one of the things that I did reflect on is I did not add enough time for just being and rest. When you start being like, okay, I'm about to just start being brave, and you start telling people, here are the things that I really want to do. Here are some things that my heart would like to do and connect with. They start sending you things, and then you start seeing these new opportunities, and you get to the O in the root framework, which is being open to new things, and all the doors start opening. And you're like, okay, I'll do this. I can do this. Oh, this looks nice. This looks interesting. I might do this. And you are encouraged. You feel motivated to be brave. And I flew a little close to the sun. And I ended the quarter. I'm ending the quarter tired, really, really tired. And excited and proud of myself, yes, but tired. So that takes me to the O. So the root framework, first you start with the R for reflect, and then the O for being open. What opportunities have I been open to? Were there any unexpected doors that came, that opened, things like that. And yes, right. So I heard many people over the month of the One Brave Thing Challenge, and even up until now, I get messages, people who have been open to new things and reaching out to people and connecting with people and trying new things, applying for new jobs. And the more I hear, the more I'm like, oh, yes, be open. It encouraged me to be open. So this quarter alone, I have done so many things that I'm so proud of. And these are things that have just been on my bucket list to do. I applied to do a TED Talk on courage and bravery. I did my first clinical workshop on unconscious bias and decolonizing therapy. I got a new client for private practice. I applied for some other workshops. I mean, it's just so many different things that you just start to do. And not only did I do these like tangible things I can touch, there was so much reflection and opportunities to challenge my thought processes in the moment, where in the past, I would have allowed those thought processes to take me down some random rabbit hole that would stunt my ability to move forward. And I challenged myself to be brave enough to say, this does not have to be personal to you unless you choose for it to be in this moment. And in those moments, I was open to a new mindset. And that right there, those are like, when you think about outcomes, and being brave is not so much about being attached to the outcome, right? But when you do think about outcomes, those are the outcomes that will last for so long, because those are the lessons you want to learn. You want to learn different mindsets so that when those thoughts come back up, you're going to be able to challenge them again, or they're going to just stop coming up because they already know, well, she's not even about to play with me. She ain't going down this rabbit hole this time. So I have definitely been open to so many things this quarter. I know we're going to talk about like planning for Q2, but I want to definitely in Q2 be more open to rest, more open to saying no. So Q2 will be planning, because I have some things coming up, but it'll be planning, but it will also be, hey, boo, chill, rest, just be. Also, it's springtime, and y'all know what your girl do in springtime. I'm going to be outside on my hammock, resting. All right. The next O in the root framework is overcome. When I look back at Q1 and think about the things that I needed to overcome, I think about what challenged me the most, what thoughts or expectations did I need to release? These were so many good questions. And when I say there was a lot to overcome, because I was doing so much self-reflection. I wrote on here the biggest challenge, and I talked about this when we were talking about self-reflection. The biggest challenge was always reflecting, without enough time to just be. And when I think about self-reflection and just being, I see it as a journey, right? It's a continuum. But I had sort of made the self-reflection part like an assignment. There were times where it became, it was automatically just happening because I'm doing it, right? I'm in this mindset of being reflective. But there are times where you just don't have to be reflective. You can just be in the moment experiencing. You don't have to figure out why you feel a way, what you need to do to not feel that way. You don't have to do any of those things. You can just be. And I want to experience the just being more often. I did this one social media post, I think for International Women's Day, and it was about, may you just be. Oh, that was such a great post. And it was a great post because so many people were responding to it. And the way that they responded, it just aligns with like my heart and this need to just exist. And I want to do more of that. And then the question about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome feels like it's always lurking, not because I'm questioning whether I should be in the spaces that I'm in, but because we live in a system of oppression where people want us to believe that we are imposters. And so it seems that imposter syndrome is always lurking because the system is created for it to be lurking, right? But this idea of what am I doing? Should I be here? Do they really want my authentic voice? That came up the most when I was recording for these Ask a Therapist episodes, which I'll share more about. And I was like, ooh, do they really want me to just talk? And this was unscripted. And I usually write out what I want to say when I'm going to say things. And they just wanted me to do that. And that has gotten so many great responses. And I am just overflowing with this validation. I don't know if it's validation. I'm overflowing with acceptance. I'm overflowing with the acceptance that God said, I'm putting you here with this gift to do this thing. And you are the person that is questioning this thing, right? Not the people. You are questioning this thing. So that is why I am now attempting to record my podcast without writing everything I want to say before I record. One of the things that we talked about on a previous episode of the podcast was about failing beautifully. Oh my goodness. So last week I took I took a certification exam, and I really had not prepared well for that exam because I have been bravery, and doing so many things that I just did not put in the time to study as much as I needed to be studying, right? So I didn't feel as prepared as I needed to be for this exam, which means I didn't feel confident. We have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for the results, which is wild in this day and age, but that's not whatever. But when I think about failing beautifully, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that this came up in my journaling because I have been like, ugh, if I don't pass this test, how am I going to feel? Am I going to take it again? Whatever. I don't have strong feelings. If I don't pass it, I'm sure at some point I will decide to take it again. When I think about failing beautifully, I really appreciate that although I was disappointed in myself for not being as prepared as I would like to have been, I appreciate that I have given myself grace and acceptance that if I do not pass this test, I understand why I didn't. I did not put as much time into studying as I think I could have. And also, I'm keeping room open for a wonderful surprise. I do not have to, we just have to understand that it's okay. It's okay that sometimes things don't work. And I'm not saying that this won't work because I'm not going to speak that into existence. I'm just speaking over the possibilities of both. And also there will be a lesson there is, girl, manage your plate effectively, which is something else I learned, managing my time effectively. But we have to be aware that we can fail beautifully and we will win beautifully. Okay. Failing doesn't have to be a miserable pit of disgust, and I will not fall into that. And then when I do, I need my friends and my community and myself to come in and say, no, ma'am, you got 2 seconds to sit there and come on out of it. So the last part of the root framework is the T in thrive. Now, when I think about thriving, yes, I think about how are we celebrating the moments of, I think about how we are celebrating ourselves, how we are celebrating our wins, our small wins, our big wins, all wins are wins. And when we feel most aligned with what we're doing, that is a state of thriving to me. So I asked, where did I feel most aligned? And what was my energy like when I was working within my zone of genius? I'm going to tell you, my vessel has been in absolute overflow this quarter. And that's because I have felt like I have been aligned with the work that I have been called to do. Now, there were times where I felt completely depleted, but that's because I had to adjust my attention to do some things that did not always feel aligned, or because I wasn't being supported in the spaces that I was in. And I think that is also on a continuum, because there are times where the spaces we are in are not always going to be the most supportive. It doesn't mean that we're not called to do work in those spaces, but those spaces are not the most support. So our support has to come from somewhere else. It has to come from our community. Sometimes it just has to come from our inner selves, which was another thing I wrote was there were times where I had to pull from my inner reserves to get through a moment. And one thing that I made a note of, always make sure you have inner reserves. I love my friends. I love my family. I love my husband. I love my support system. But we all have things going on. And yes, there will be times where I have zero, and they'll know, and they'll do whatever they need to do. But I need to always, at the best I can, make sure I have inner reserves, because there are moments where you look around and you have to pull from what you have to get you from A to B. Okay? So always make sure you have inner reserves. So this is how I use the root framework to review Q1 for myself. I went through reflecting on what patterns or behaviors emerged this quarter. How did I feel about the quarter? What came up for me? I thought about opportunities that opened themselves up to me, anything new. I thought about things that I had to overcome, what challenges that I had to overcome. I thought about thriving. What made me feel most aligned? Where did I have to hold more space? Was there any areas of resistance? And what was my energy like when I felt like I was in my zone of genius? You know, did I feel like I was thriving? And did I pause to really, truly celebrate each of these moments? If you would like to use the root framework is still available. I'll link it in the show notes so you can use the root framework just to review your own Q1 journey. I wanted to check in with myself as a leader just to see how I have been doing, because a lot has been shifting in my own leadership journey as I support other leaders. And it's been important to me to be mindful of my own bandwidth, how I'm showing up, how I'm modeling ways to show up for other leaders. And one of the questions that I asked myself is, what did you hold this quarter as a leader? And it was uncertainty. It was uncertainty. And the thought that came up with this was, it is such an interesting space to be in. I think as a helper, to be in a space where you are impacted while also holding space for others that are impacted by uncertainty or by the circumstances that cause uncertainty. I don't know. I have not found yet how to process that except compartmentalizing, making sure I have my own support systems. It is a fact that it takes a lot of emotional labor to advocate and care and build brave spaces and community for others. And with that knowledge, I prioritizing making sure I have those spaces for myself. And one of the therapists that I commune with, her name is Christian Gibson. Check her out. She brought up this conversation. It was so good, where she shared about this video she watched with where trees, they connect through the roots to nurture one another, and how we need to always make sure we are connecting through the roots with each other. And it's so, like, we had such a beautiful conversation about this, and we just started talking about this need to nurture one another through roots. And sometimes those roots are underground and they're so deep and so connected. And I think when we think about community, sometimes it's just such a light term, right? It might just be like all the same people in all the same group. No, it's deeply rooted connections with other people that sustain you while you are holding people above ground. And that is what I'm holding on to in those moments where in my leadership, I am having to hold people or hold spaces or create brave community above ground. It is my responsibility to make sure I am deeply connected by the roots to others in order to sustain myself. And I am committed to doing that for myself, but also being roots for others underground. And that has really helped to keep me energized. I have so much appreciated, one, that I stopped to not only, I've so much appreciated this really intentional quarter of looking at myself as a person, Brown Heart Wellness, myself as a leader, all of these different identities I hold, to see where am I showing up? How am I showing up? And then there are so many other parts of me where I still want to review. I want to, do some review on how am I showing up as a mom? How am I showing up as a friend? Things like that. And that'll take time, but that's how we know, like, do a little check-in with myself. How am I preserving my energy? What things did I say no to this quarter? What things did I say yes to and I regretted it this quarter? And there were some things. And how do I want to make changes based off of the data that we have collected? All this information that I've shared with you, it's just data. Without the data, how are we going to plan for the next quarter? So I wanted to have a conversation. That's what I wanted today's podcast to feel like. A conversation. Well, it's not a conversation because y'all not talking back to me, but y'all better talk back on the socials. But I wanted to just have an opportunity to share with you what it is like to collect the data, right, over a quarter, and use that data to move into the next part of your journey, right? So I've just collected data, and I'm going to use this information to go into the next part of my journey for Q2. In Q2, like I said, I'm looking to integrate more periods of just being. And just being doesn't mean I won't be doing work. It means that I won't feel like I have to actively be all the way doing something, solving problems, all of those things. I can just ease into whatever it is, because my brain is always like, you got to be doing something. Should you be doing this? You should be doing this. Thank you so much for having this one-sided conversation with me. If you have not downloaded the Root Framework, go and download the Root Framework. Ask yourself some questions. Take a few hours. Sit with yourself, your journal, your ink pen, and truly check in with yourself. Gather some data. Before we end, y'all know we always close with a brown heart moment. So if you feel comfortable enough doing so, close your eyes. Taking a good deep breath. Hold. Release. Take another deep breath. if you feel comfortable doing so on your own. What is one thing that you want to honor from Q1? What is one thing that you want to honor from January through March? Think about that thing. What is something that you want to release? What is something that you want to release? Take another deep breath. Today, I am so grateful for this platform. I am grateful for the opportunity to just pivot and do things differently like I'm doing today. Thank you for reflecting with me on Q1, and I am looking forward to Q2. We will be having our first guest coming up soon. If you would like to be a guest or know someone who would be a great guest, please email me. I will put the information in the show notes. And if you have not joined the Substack, I know. In my data, I have not been posting on my Substack, but I'm going to, and you do not want to miss it. That is where I will be sharing updates of the One Brave Thing Challenge, as well as my email list. So I'll put all the information in the show notes for that. And I am open for new coaching and therapy clients. So if you know someone who is needing coaching and or therapy, please check out my website. I'll put that information in the show notes. Listen, take care of yourselves and be brave. Bravery is a lifestyle. It's not one action. It's not one day. It is a lifestyle. And I will see y'all next episode. Bye.